Keynote speaker, Mr. Srikanth Nadhamuni. He will be talking about personhood credentials. How do you prove you are human in the era of AI deepfakes? Mr. Srikanth is a technologist and an entrepreneur with 35 years of experience in the area of CPU design, healthcare, national ID, banking, and financial services sectors. He is currently CEO of Khosla Labs, a startup incubator that he co-founded with Binod Khosla and chairman of Trust, a digital banking SaaS company. He was on the board of the SDFC Bank, the world's fourth largest bank. Srikanth was the founder CTO of Aadhaar. He led the setup of the Aadhaar Technology Center for the development, design, and operations of the Aadhaar systems to issue a national ID to all the 1.3 billion Indian. He is also the managing trustee of the e-Governments Foundation, which he co-founded with Nandan Nilekani in 2003. It focuses on improving governance and public service delivery in Indian cities using a suite of municipal ERP product. Currently, eGov products are deployed in over 2,000 cities in India. More recently, during the COVID Delta wave, Srikanth founded the 10-bed ICU project to create ICU in government hospitals in smaller towns and villages. 10-bed ICU has created over 200 10-bed ICUs in 8 states in less than 2 years. Srikanth has spent 14 years in the Silicon Valley, working for several global companies such as Sun Microsystems, Intel Corporation, Silicon Graphics, and WebMD. Sir, over to you. I welcome you. I request Dr. Misbah to present a shawl to the speaker.
Well, it's wonderful to be here at the PKI conference here in Bangalore. Greetings to the dignitaries here at the event as well as all the attendees. I'm just curious, how many of you are from academic institutions here? Can we raise our hands? Okay. How many of you are from industry, from companies that work on security, PKI, so on? Okay. How many of you neither academia nor private industry? Okay, some? All right, wonderful. I just wanted to get an idea of my audience today. So today I'm going to talk about trust actually. You're all familiar with trust concepts, authentication, authorization, security, privacy, and so on. The speakers have been talking about it in the morning. You know, when I was 12, my mother, I'm from Mysore. My mother took me to the Canara Bank on our road, 5th Main Road in Vivi Mohalla. And she got me a bank account. She deposited about 12 rupees. And the bank manager gave her a small kiddies account card, booklet, okay? Bank account card. It was like a little book. And every time I went and deposited 2 rupees or withdrew 7 rupees to buy a wicket-keeping gloves or whatever, people would recognize me. They would look at my booklet and go, okay, I know who this kid is, and do the transaction. This was how trust worked when I was young. I'm sure many of you remember that era. But since then, core banking systems have arrived. Not only in banking, everything has gotten digital, and then it's gotten a little bit more complicated. So this famous cartoon in the New Yorker in 1993 actually captures the gist of the problem that we're all faced with online. No more can I walk up to my bank manager and show my card and say, I'm so-and-so, and I need to withdraw 10 rupees. And they know who I am by looking at me and looking at my card. Not possible anymore. So what happens in the digital world? So this dog that is sitting up there is telling that little dog, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. Okay, this is the crux of the problem. When you're on a server and you're getting hits from various clients, how do I know whether this person is Srikanth Nadhamuni or Ashish Banati or whoever else? That's what this dog is saying. Nobody knows it's a dog, and I can do whatever I want on the internet, right? This is the problem of authentication. You have to prove who you are, and the server needs to believe that and needs to have some sort of trust credentials, okay? And we built one such, Aadhaar in India. I was a CTO of the project and created the technology center with the help of amazing people here, like Pramod Verma and Sanjay Jain and others. But we'll talk today about a slightly different topic. What happens to trust in the age of generative AI? Okay? While there are amazing positive aspects of AI, generative AI, we've all used ChatGPT. How many of you have used ChatGPT? Pretty much all of you, right? Wonderful. And you know what it can do, right? So those are some of the positive things that generative AI can do. But there are also obstacles, okay, that hopefully Ganesha can help us sort out. The obstacles of generative AI are what I'm going to talk about today when it comes to trust and identity, okay? This is a paper that I co-authored along with a bunch of amazing researchers from Harvard and MIT and UC Berkeley and OpenAI and Microsoft and a bunch of other organizations, OpenMind and so on. This deals with the issue of trust in the era of generative AI. It tries to understand what are the kinds of challenges posed by generative AI for the creation of trust, or the maintenance of trust in our systems, online systems, and how do we deal with these challenges, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit, since it's an Indian audience, it's a Bangalore audience, we all understand Aadhaar. I'm going to bring in a little bit about what are the implications of this for us in India, okay? India's taken a lead in identity and Aadhaar and so on, and the DPI, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So, okay, I've got all these Zoom things that are covering up my screen. Let me try and close this so I can see my own screen. Okay, so as you can see, there are a couple of trends that could contribute to online frauds. Okay, one is indistinguishability. Humans can't be distinguished from AI bots because of very specific things. Okay, we were used to what? CAPTCHA. We were used to, you know, can you spot buses in all these pictures? Can you spot fire hydrants? That's how we used to distinguish. Are you a real human? Are you a bot? Okay, because if you allow bots, it will go and create 1,000 Facebook accounts and 1,000 Twitter accounts or whatever. And then Elon Musk says, I'm not going to buy Twitter anymore because it has all these, unreal accounts created by bots or whatever, right? So we had these systems, but unfortunately, many of those are being compromised because of AI. Avatars. You're hearing about ransom attacks, people calling, these bad guys calling parents and putting on the voice of their child and saying, if you don't pay me X amount of money, I'm going to kill your child or whatever. And then the child's voice comes there, okay? And you are convinced that it is your child, right? Similarly, images. You can see Midjourney and Dolly and all these generative AI programs create whoever you want. You've seen all those Trump and Kamala Harris pictures and videos as well on the internet. So it's very hard now to tell whether this is the real person, is this voice I'm hearing is from the real person, is the Zoom call I am having right now, am I talking to a human being on the other side, right? These are all very imminent and also already to some extent happening, right? How do we deal with this trust deficit? Actions. The CAPTCHA kind of actions. Now AI is able to do with agentic frameworks even complicated things. It's able to respond like a human being, not just on single transactions, it's able to do multi-transaction kind of things where you're convinced that it is a human being on the other side because it's able to do fairly complex things which require different kinds of services to come together with like agentic frameworks. That coupled with the scalability of AI right now. First, the cost of AI is decreasing. It's $3 to $5 for 1,000 tokens, for 1 million tokens, sorry. 1 million tokens is about 750,000 words. And all of the Lord of the Rings trilogy is 500,000 words. So you can pretty much gobble up all of it and make sense of it or ask questions on it less than $3 or less than $5, right? So the cost is coming down of AI and increased access. Llama 3, lots of companies using Llama 3, 405 billion parameter model is working pretty well, right? So accessibility, at the same time, we can't distinguish bots from humans. It's becoming increasingly hard. How do we deal with this? And since I worked on identity, since I was CTO of the Aadhaar project, and we did a lot of work on that design, I sort of felt compelled to collaborate with these researchers to figure out how do we handle this new world where we're going to be threatened by AI, okay, where it's going to pose obstacles while it's doing all these amazing things. As in all great technology, it can be used for good as well as for bad. And here I'm looking at how we counter what AI can do with respect to creating chaos, especially in trusted systems that we have carefully constructed. So currently, the solutions for countering AI have been, if you go look at the details, the CAPTCHA kind of models, or like I said, find fire hydrants on buses and so on. This can be easily, it's already broken by highly capable AI. Economic barriers. The other way you can do it and say, hey, if you want to come into my site, you have to pay every month. Okay, that's one way to ensure that bots don't keep coming in. I can't create 1,000 bots because then I'll have to pay 1,000 times to create accounts. But this is not very scalable and not non-inclusive. You're putting a very high economic barrier, which means you can't invite everybody into your system. So it's not a very good way of handling this. AI detection tools to identify synthetic content, whether it's watermarking. Very recently, Google and OpenAI and Anthropic came together to create an a watermarking standard along with the government of the United States. But still, it looks like those can also be broken by highly capable AI. Appearance and document-based humanness verification. Okay, selfie checks. For instance, the RBI, besides Aadhaar, KYC, and so on, allowed for video ID KYC, right? Where I can say, okay, I have a government-issued driver's license. I'm going to take a photo of it. Then I'm going to take a selfie of myself. And at the backend server, it says, oh, this person who I'm seeing a video of stream smiling at me is definitely the one I'm seeing in the photo on my driver's license, and obviously it's a government-issued license. In fact, I can even check online whether that license is valid and say, oh, these are the same person. I can do KYC on this person. This is video ID KYC, or VSIP as it's called in India. Even that is broken. Why? Because I can create the video, like your selfie, using generative AI. Your ID is your ID. You've taken somebody's ID, you're creating a video and feeding it in, saying, create a video of this person on the photo and make it realistic, make him smile, and so on and so forth. That is also broken, right? Appearance and document-based humanness verification can also be broken today with highly capable AI. And so on. Okay, we can keep going on. So what I'm trying to explain is we are coming to an era where generative AI can be used in these nefarious ways to break the trust systems we have built up to now. But there are a couple of things that AI still can't do, and it's relevant to the PKI conference. One is it can't pass off as a real person in the real world. Okay? If there is an AI that walks in right now into our conference, you'll figure it out, at least now. Maybe in the future even that will become harder. But right now, if a robot, humanoid comes in here, you can say, no, this is not a human being. Okay? That is still, AI can't do that yet. Another thing it can't do, thanks to all of your work, is it can't break cryptographic algorithms and systems we have today. Okay, of course, the earlier speakers talked about quantum computing, its ability to break it and the resistance we need and so on. But at least now, the way we do cryptography, the way we factor very large primes are still not breakable by generative AI. And I don't think quantum computing has broken it either. Might happen. That's why I say what AI cannot do yet. Could happen. But right now, these two are things that we know that only humans can do. Okay? We can detect other humans quite well, and AI can't break cryptographic algorithms. Some of it is for a lay audience, the definition of cryptography and so on. Of course, everybody in this room is very familiar with this. So how does this work? Okay, and then we'll talk a little bit about how Aadhaar works. So as you see, in the middle is the user, customer, user, end user, and so on. He or she needs a credential, a personhood credential, what we are calling PHC. Okay? So he requests for a credential, provides certain evidence. Okay? The issuer can be Aadhaar. Just to make it a little bit more concrete, let's say the issuer is Aadhaar. Okay? The user has provided evidence. What did you provide? You provided proof of address evidence. You gave a document that had the address which you had filled out in the Aadhaar form. It could be one of 40 odd documents. Then there was proof of identity. You showed your photograph in one of the documents. It could be a driver's license, it could be a passport, it could be another some 30, 40 documents in which you showed your photo and said, hey, it looks like me. When you take my photo, you will see that it looks like this, right? So you provided evidence and you gave your name, address, gender, date of birth as well. And the issuer issued you a credential. Let's call it the personhood credential right now. Certainly, Aadhaar, because you came in front of me and I can make a difference between a robot and a human being, and the fact that I scanned your biometrics, iris, your fingerprint, and so on, I can certainly know you're human. Okay, there's no doubt about it. Okay, we'll come to the next constraint in the next slide. Knowing that you're human is not enough for a lot of other transactions, right? So, but in this case, for the personhood credentials alone, Aadhaar can figure out that it is indeed a human who came in front of me, and they've given some validation, provided evidence of the information that they've given to me, and now I can issue personhood credentials to this person. Okay? Now, in the case of the person, today, we do have a way of getting those credentials on our Aadhaar, keeping it in our DigiLocker. You've all used all of those facilities, right? We can keep it. We can keep those credentials in here. Okay, I'm not going to go to the cryptographic details. You all understand that. You know how that is being done. But I do get my credentials in a way that I can show it to a service provider or a verifier. So that is on the right side. So the user authorizes the use of the credential with a service provider and provides a zero-knowledge proof. Okay? I'm sure most of you understand zero-knowledge proof. This is an idea, let's say, the famous example everybody gives is, if you go to a bar, the bouncer out there wants to know whether you're 18 or above, and usually the way you do it is you pull out your ID and say that, see, I'm actually above 18, so let me inside the bar. When you do that, it's not privacy preserving. I can see your name, your address, everything, right? So how do you do it in a way that I do not disclose more information than I need to? What is needed by the bouncer? That I'm above 18. How can I prove I'm above 18 without disclosing other information? That's an example of a zero-knowledge proof, right? It can happen in many, 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 many instances where the way the Aadhaar works in authentication, when you put your Aadhaar number and put your fingerprint, it's only giving you a yes or a no. It's not giving all your details that the repository has and says, you yourself check it out if it's the right person. Then you're compromising on the privacy of the individual. So it's sort of like a zero-knowledge proof. It's just saying, yes, this is the right person, or no, this is not the right person, not authenticated. Password is wrong type of idea, right? So through a zero-knowledge proof, you can indeed prove to the service provider exactly what that person wants to know. And then the verification, whether passed or rejected, comes back to the user so I can track what's happening. This is pretty much how the personhood credential works. And there are multiple methods in which you can do this. How can you create personhood credentials? The example I gave is that of biometrics. Why? Because it is part of us. My fingerprint is part of me. The entropy in my iris is part of me. My face photo is part of me, right? So it's very closely tied with my identity of my body itself. So biometric is a pretty good method of doing it. And in fact, NIST, the National Institute of Standards, considers biometric verification to be the highest strength of evidence. Okay? It's obvious why that is the case. So examples are Aadhaar in our own country. There is a company, WorldCoin, that is also doing something similar. But there are other companies that are trying these methods of creating personhood credentials. There's another method. If you do not want to use biometric methods, you can use social graphs. If a bunch of people come to in a party and meet you and talk to you and shake hands with you and have dinner with you, they know you're human. There's no doubt about it. Okay? Of course, I'm sort of exaggerating the scenario, but a social graph, a bunch of people coming together, you can indeed prove that people are human. You can also do that through a web of trust. If you can have, actually social graph is where one person could recommend another, because I'm already in the system. I'm already proven to be human. I can now recommend and say, this person I know is also human, so let him in. Or in the case of web of trust, a group of people are sort of recommending a person, and a lot of this is happening online, okay? I'm sort of making it sound like it's a physical gathering, but a lot of this obviously will not scale if people have to literally come together like this in order to create these proof of personhood identities. How does it scale throughout the entire country? How do you do billions of people like this, right? So there are other methods people are trying. There's a company, there's a verification party idea that Bright ID and IDENA are using. The existing human vouchers for another user, that example, proof of humanity. There's a group called Circles that is trying this, and so on. So these are methods to prove personhood, to prove that it is indeed a human being. Lastly, there are government ID documents, what are loosely called breeder documents. The birth certificate is a very good example of a breeder document. Birth certificate leads you to get other certificates because that's the initial certificate that you got when you were born. So there are lots of countries that try to use existing government IDs to slowly improve and create proof of personhood. It is possible. If the social security number has been in the United States for the 80 or 200 years, I don't know, some large number of years, and it's being used for so many different things, maybe they have figured out that, okay, these are all indeed human beings, and slowly you can build on top of that, okay? Just as a loose example of how you might imagine these things to work. So these are different ways in which we can create this proof of personhood. But that's not sufficient. Okay, if I create proof of personhood, still I can't stop from the, me taking more resources than I should. If I'm allowed one LPG gas cylinder, I might take 10 if all you need to know is I'm human. Okay, but how do you ensure that only one is given? Uniqueness constraint is important. The UID Authority of India, the U stands for uniqueness, right? That was the very hard constraint that we solved for. And the way you solve for it is by deduplication. It's very hard. When you have a billion people and a new person comes and says, I want an Aadhaar, we literally have to scan iris, fingerprints and take a photo of the face and compare it with almost the entire country, one by one. Unfortunately, you can't index these images and say, oh, I will just go to this bucket and figure out a few people. You literally have to match against the whole bunch of people. Of course, there are ways in which we prune and speed it up and so on, but still, it's a very difficult, expensive operation in order to do this, but it's very strong when it's done. That is why Aadhaar is being used in so many systems. None of the earlier, older IDs that we had on cards or even online did not have this constraint, nor was it implemented with such rigor. Now it has given us an ability to ensure that if it's one family gets one LPG gas cylinder, we can indeed implement that, right? It's hard to game that system. So resource capture can be avoided. So this uniqueness constraint is a very important aspect of I've just given you a government example. The same, if you want to know that Twitter accounts are indeed unique, that one person is not pretending to be 10 people, you can do the same. Whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Google and so on. Unfortunately, they cannot implement it right now without personhood credentials, just based on your email authentication and so on. You can't. I can create as many accounts as I want. I can pretend to be as many people as I want. And that has implications in many systems. Okay, I can change public opinion of people if I have 1 million bots working for me, creating beautiful conversations about what I want you to believe, right? Where we've already seen this Cambridge Analytica story that happened in Europe on the Brexit thing, which was broken by the Guardian newspaper, was this very case. A large number of people were being influenced on social media, one way or the other. Okay. Similarly, you've heard of these stories in elections being sort of manipulated. If you get a whole bunch of people, right now it might have been people, okay, from some countries, state actors and so on, who are creating opinions out there as though they are citizens who are having discussions. Imagine bots doing that in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. It creates chaos in our democratic systems, in our institutions, where we need to have these discourses in order to come up with our opinions and move forward as a society, right? That's what we're talking about. So it's a little bit disconcerting when you think about some of the negative effects when you look at how these systems can be, these generative AI systems can be used. I won't go into too much of the detail. These are many, many proof of personhood mechanisms and how they actually rank on privacy, on fraud resistance, on inclusivity, decentralization, and whether it is bound to one person. It turns out that biometric does have some properties that make it very strong. Of course, it also has the concern that if I lose my biometric, if somebody takes my biometric, I've lost it all, and so on. And you can't just, offer another one. I'm stuck with my fingerprint and my face and my iris and so on. So this is sort of a matrix that sort of shows you different mechanisms and how they rate on the various things that we do value on the left, on the y-axis. So there are 3 key benefits. I want to wrap it up quickly so that we can have a few questions perhaps. There are 3 key benefits of the PHC systems. One is reduce the impact of sock puppeting. I don't know if you've heard this word, sock puppeting. This is like those Muppets. You use the socks and pretend like you are a person, right? So that's the word that's becoming common in this particular sort of industry, where you talk about creating fake online identities and use multiple accounts to deceive, manipulate, create public perception, propping up the reputation of businesses and individuals. How many times you've seen in Flipkart or Amazon, there'll be a product and somebody will say, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. This is so wonderful. This is great. And there'll be another product you'll see, oh, this is so bad. The first day I brought it, it broke and so on, right? And you always wonder, is this person the competition? Or is this person the friend of the guy who put up this product and so on? Now it's much more easier. You don't need to call a friend and say 5 friends and say, hey, tell my product is good. You can create 100,000 bots easily, right? Low cost and easily available. You can create bots and they'll make incredibly human-like comments about your product and make up even better stories than we all do. Essays coming out of ChatGPT, sometimes we feel, oh my God, I couldn't have written that. So can you imagine what it can do on products, in marketplaces and so on? It's easy to do this. Carrying out scams on digital marketplaces. So this is the effect. Bot attacks, DDoS kind of attacks. You can get AI to do it. Instead of somebody programming a DDoS attack, you can have agentic frameworks say, okay, you try this and try that, and different agents of AI are trying different accounts. Okay? I know I'm painting a scary scenario here, but we have to get ready for this because technology today is capable of doing it. It's just a matter of people putting together this technology. Verified delegation to AI agents. There is a valid case for bots to represent us to do some work. Let's say I want to buy some medicine. I might love it if some AI bot is there that goes and checks out who's got that medicine, what is the cost, do you really have it, can you send it to me right now, and have it delivered to me. So that can be an agent of mine, an AI agent of mine, but that we don't want to prevent. Just because it's not a person, it's still a valid use case, right? But can I delegate my human right, a personhood right, to my AI agent so that it performs that action correctly with my credentials? Should be able. It would be good use of AI, right? So it can do that. This PHC credentials, the way we have envisioned it, is certainly able to do that. So to wrap up, you know what, I added a slide on Aadhaar. Somehow it's missed out here on our DPI architecture. Let me just talk about it, though the slide is not there. We started the Aadhaar project in 2009, 2010, and we envisioned an architecture where many government, private sector, and other institutions can use it for identity only, right? It was not meant for just for voting or just for healthcare or just for education and so on, like many other countries did. We built an architecture for identity, and of course, we made it online. We absolutely had to use biometrics for the reasons I mentioned, okay, to get personhood, to get uniqueness, and so on. And we deployed it. And the beauty of it was sometimes you spend a lot of time designing systems and they don't roll out the way you designed it. Okay, that's the more usual case. But to our sort of amazement, the idea of an innovation technology as a digital public good caught on not only with the identity layer, because the entire country got to taste this digital identity and actually use it in useful ways. We went on to build other systems, whether it is UPI for payment, whether it was CoWIN for vaccinations, whether it is the verified credentials we call DigiLocker, and so on and so forth. Now, you know, we walk into the airport with the Digi Yatra and it's such a beautiful feeling, whereas in the US, I have to buy that monthly Real ID or something, it's called Clear ID, I think it's, you have to pay a private company every month to be able to do what we do in Digi Yatra. So the idea of this digital public infrastructure as something that can be layered, we need an identity layer in order to do banking, financial services, payments. We need payments and finance in order to pay for so many different things, whether it's for education or whether it's for health or whether it's for ONDC transactions and so on and so forth. That's the slide I had of the layered architecture of DPI. All of this rests on a design of trust, okay? It rests on cryptography. We have to ensure that that trust is not broken, because if you break that trust, if identity itself is shaken, then the other aspects of the layered services will also have a negative impact. So I will just stop there and we can take a few questions perhaps. Thank you. Any questions?
Are being seen both from presentation and injection, what is a recourse there?
Yeah. There are attacks with respect to fingerprints. There are attacks less with respect to iris, but with fingerprints definitely. There's something called a gummy finger. You can make a gummy finger of someone else, for instance, and stick it in your finger and do that. But there are ways to deal with it too. There are liveness detectors. Okay, if you have a liveness detector. You can indeed find out based on the humidity and based on the warmth and so on and so forth that this is truly a live finger as opposed to a gummy finger with some rubber sitting on top of your finger. When it comes to iris, it's actually, we don't see as many attacks, but it's actually easier to detect. We can see micro movements of your iris. We can see veins. We can see, if you zoom in really close, there's lots going on in your eyes as well. Image, unfortunately, the photo of the face is unfortunately the easier one to attack. But it's also the most convenient because we all have mobile phones. Okay, unfortunately, biometric fingerprint scanners and iris scanners are dedicated devices that you need to buy or integrate and so on and so forth for banks and banking and other purposes, for attendance and other purposes. Whereas the face is catching on really well. DigiYatra is using that. Okay, of course, in combination with a person, that security guard over there knows that you're a real person. You're not showing an iPad over there in front of the DigiYatra camera. So those use cases can be taken care of. It's case by case, you have to look at it. You have to look at what are you guarding? What is the transaction value? What is the level of assurance you need? And how do you safeguard that transaction? There is no easy one answer that says, okay, this is bulletproof, this will work 100% of the time. But as you saw, with all other methods, either they are not privacy preserving, or you have to give away too many of your details, or it doesn't scale elegantly, and so on and so forth. That matrix I showed you, biometrics seems like has a lot of strong properties. Yeah, please.
So this Aadhaar is a wonderful card, I would say. Even I went to U.S. Embassy to, they capture your fingerprints and iris and all. It is similar to that. But we have so many cards in India. Is it like, voter ID, driving license, and so on and so forth? Is it possible to have one card which can serve all the purpose?
Yeah, good question. See, there are sort of requirements in both directions, and what I mean by that is, you could consider having only one card in your pocket as a good thing, and wherever you go, whether you take a flight or whether you go to your library or whether you want your pension or whatever, attendance and so on and so forth, it does. There's also the privacy concern, okay? Does this mean that it is easier for systems to track all your behavior, okay? So what has been done with respect to the design of Aadhaar has been, Aadhaar only looks at identity. It really has no idea that you went to an ATM and withdrew money, or you went to an airport, took a flight, and so on. It only sees an authentication request, okay? It is not tracking anything because it doesn't know that this is the transaction that's taking place. Of course, the agency that is doing that is providing you that particular service, that is when they let you inside the Airports Authority of India should know. Okay, because they have every right to figure out that you actually entered the airport, or in the case of LPG gas cylinder, whatever maybe the oil marketing companies ought to know that you actually took a cylinder and so on. So that is the way in which I think we have balanced the need for convenience with the need for preserving privacy.
I have a question this side.
Yeah, sure.
My question a little bit more on the high level. I think this entire idea of public infrastructure and public good that we are in, as you rightly mentioned, trust is the atom that really ties these things together. Without trust, we may not have the DPI together. But given that we are using this infrastructure for much higher order services, do you think the additional layer of being genuine also would come in going forward? And let me explain what I mean by genuine here.
Sorry, say that last part again.
Genuine.
What is genuine?
Yeah.
See,
and if I may just complement that, so what I mean by that is, for example, at this point, my DPI infrastructure tells me, it tells me that if I am Prashant, it tells me that yes, you are Prashant, but I can actually probably beef up my capabilities 100 times by AI tools, saying that, okay, I may be good in one thing, but I may create a profile that might make me sound that I'm good in 10 different things. And And that is where I think a lot of, we lose genuinity in terms
Yeah.
of
Okay. See, identity systems are not sort of judging your qualities, your capabilities, how smart you are, how many talents you have, and so on. That's not the role of identity systems. In fact, I remember Nandan, during his initial description of Aadhaar, he would say, if you want to call yourself Amitabh Bachchan, we are not going to stop you. But you will have to be Amitabh Bachchan all your life. So Aadhaar had this property that everybody who gave their age, because people used to game the system in different ways. I am 50 years old because I want to get my payroll. I am at the same time 65 because I want to also get my pension. I am 70 and dead already and I want to get my insurance. Those things were possible because, at the same time, simultaneously, because they were siloed systems, right? So you could say, hey, in this system, this is my best age, okay, and so on. I'm talking about a minority. I mean, it's not like everybody does this, but it was possible. You could game the system. Once people understood, oh, this Aadhaar identity is going to be used everywhere, they had to pick. Either you're 50 or you're 60 or you're 70. Either you're dead or you're alive. You had to pick, okay? And it's very hard for government to come and say, oh, you should be this and so on and so forth. Even though there are verification systems, okay? What I think the biggest property of self-cleaning property of Aadhaar, because of which it is trusted by banks and by telecoms, by pension authorities and so on, is the fact that that database is very likely very accurate, because you would have figured out that game is over. I have to pick one thing. It's better to pick what is real. Otherwise, I might get into trouble later on. That's how I feel that it got a... So in some sense, that creation of a system of trust with credible data is super important. Okay? After that, so many other systems have worked beautifully for us. You don't know how difficult it was. You seem much younger. When the days when I used to take a birth certificate for some government office, that guy will say, I don't know if this is real. Get it signed by a gazetted officer. Okay? Some of the older folks here are nodding your heads. Okay, one government office issues a certificate, another government office says, I can't trust this. Right? So that was the system we lived in. And when you have a system with such low trust, it puts so much friction in the economy, in the way people go about, conducting their activities. So the fact that you are indeed genuine and your data is believable and there is a good system of trust that is built is super important. It oils the machinery and ensures that transactions take place, day-to-day things take place without too much friction. So it's a very important concept of making sure identity is, we have a good system and the trust prevails, and that's largely the work here. Yes, sir.
which had the capability to give only the relevant information. The trust was the certificate is trusted, and if that certificate is trusted, I will generate a token. For example, if I am crossing for a visa, it will give only that you have the visa rather than the age or the height or whatever. That one is kind of a thing. Unfortunately, X.509 had already been come, so these things didn't take place much, but now due to identity it may come. But coming to Aadhaar, I have two issues. Part of Aadhaar database can be replicated by crook or other means are there. Okay? And because confidentiality becomes this one, etc., a kind of a thing. And another thing is, many a times Aadhaar is used for authorization, which is not correct. And so this is where the problem comes, even though earlier Aadhaar allowed for linking for different transactions, which led to say privacy will not be preserved, and so now you say only one. And how do you handle such things? For example, if you see in the US, You have a driver database, this cannot be used anywhere. The visa database or the biometric, it cannot be used anywhere else kind of a thing. So this kind of this one,
Absolutely.
I'm not understanding in your Aadhaar architecture or in the Indian context.
Absolutely. It's a very good question. See, convenience and security are in conflict. Okay, they are in conflict. If I open the gate very wide and say, conveniently come in, bad guys also come in. If I say, I want to be super secure in my country and my gate is so tight, nobody, even the genuine people, can't come in. Okay, this is what you are highlighting, that there is a conflict between convenience and keeping our systems secure and private as well, PDPD laws and so on. So how do you deal with it? I'll give you an example. Sometimes I go through the Paris airport, it is hell. 2 hours I have to wait going from one terminal to the other to catch another flight to go to the America or whatever, because that fellow wants to do the whole, thing again, check again. And one by one, everybody is going through. And I am saying, I am ready for you to scan my iris or take my photo or do a one-time thing. You take 5 hours to do that initial enrollment. I'm ready to do it. If every transaction I can just move like that, you're also secure. I found my convenience. We can make it happen. So my belief is, if we design systems well, Aadhaar is a good example of that. You can actually get both convenience and security. Okay, for instance, KYC used to be 1,500 rupees. Okay, we couldn't do mutual funds, Sahi Hai and all couldn't happen. Okay, most people needed to pay 3 lakh rupees to get a mutual fund set up, because the cost of KYC itself was 1,500 rupees. And the broker makes 0.3% of the transaction. So it's not worth it. So he'll never go beyond a certain socio-economic strata. Aadhaar KYC came and it broke that barrier. 3 rupees KYC, very high assurance. So the country did not give up and open the gates and said, anybody can come and I don't need to check, I don't need your KYC, just come and buy whatever product you want. No, the country instead said, I will still check you at a higher level of assurance than I earlier had, and still you will be found to be the right person when you claim to be somebody. I will do a proper KYC. So that's one example. Another example I'll give you, when we were building Aadhaar, I had set up a technology center in the outer ring road, near Marathalli, outer ring road. Other countries would come. Japan came, Australia came. And the team from Australia, I still remember, we explained how we are doing Aadhaar, and we were talking about, we are setting up AUAs and KUAs as registered entities through which transactions will happen. You can't hit the Aadhaar database as an individual. We have these registered entities through which you have to go and so on. And then the Australian, towards the end, he said, we want to be a AUA. Okay? This is from the Australian government. I said, okay, maybe you didn't understand what I said. The AUAs are like Indian entities which can route transactions for authentication. They can, of course, could be government entities, maybe largely. It could also private entities can be AUAs, to route transactions through our system to Aadhaar. You're sitting in Australia, why would you want an AUA account from Aadhaar? Then he tells me, lots of students come from India through our ports of entry. They fly into Australia. Imagine if I'm an AUA and I check I authenticate them through my port of entry, through Aadhaar. One, your people can fly through in seconds while other people are waiting in long lines. Number two, my country is more secure, right? So there are so many examples, if you design systems well, where this conflict of whether the gate is too wide open and too loose, or whether it is so wide shut that nobody can come in, even the genuine users, I think we can manage that in an appropriate way.
Is there a study on that to say at what point this becomes useful, at what point, what is the risk that is going to be involved there?
Well, I don't know a study, but we certainly created a matrix of, there is a concept of assurance level. I keep using the word assurance. The idea of assurance level is, your lock that you put on your safe or on your house can't be more expensive than what you're guarding. Okay? If it is not viable for you, right? Similarly, in the Aadhaar system also, when you are guarding something through an authentication and so on, you can say that, hey, for this level of transaction, okay, for a UPI transaction worth 10 rupees or 50 rupees, I will allow you to do it without biometric. I will allow you much, much easier. But if you're doing a banking transaction worth 1 lakh, I will need you to do fingerprint. If you're going to take your pension money at the end of all this, running for a few lakhs, I will ask for a 2-factor with biometric and this and a OTP and so on and so forth. So that matrix we certainly created, because not everybody needs to use the highest level and say, I need to do biometric. That will slow down systems, that will also make it more expensive. We created those concepts so that the different government departments and even private sector could figure out where they fit in and say, okay, this is sort of where I want to work. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much.